Now, guys, news that is coming out of the global automobile industry is that BYD, a Chinese automobile giant and the maker of EVs and plug-in hybrid vehicles, has outsold Tesla, an American automobile maker also who is also an expert in EV. For those of you who don't know, Tesla is a company which is owned by Elon Musk, the owner of SpaceX and also the owner of X, or formerly Twitter, where we all interact, which is the main platform for interaction, social media platform. Now, what they are saying is that Tesla's biggest rival has reached the 2024 EV sales milestone in August. BYD has sold more than 1 million vehicles since January to August, by the end of August. Now, what they are saying is this, is that the sales figure of 1,004,623 represent a substantial growth of 12% compared to the same period, 2023. So the company, compared to last year, it has grown 12% year on year. So compared to last year, it has sold more vehicles during this period of year. So the sales of electric vehicles actually is growing. Now, these sales represent only EV alone. The sales represent only EV alone. Going by numbers, BYD's EV sales of August 2024 stood at 148,470, year-on-year increase of 2% as compared, to the previous year. The previous year, the company sold 130,000 EVs in July, which is, of course, a substantial amount, compared to the previous year. Now, what they are also saying that this is a threat. Of course, the West has been rattled by the Chinese EV industry to the point that America and Canada, they have put 100% tariffs on these EVs which are coming from China, even though, of course, they have not yet entered the American market, but they were preparing to enter the American market. Now, they decided to put tariffs on the vehicles because they do not want to compete. They fear to compete. In the past, we have reported on this, of course, the problems which are facing the Western automobile industry. We know that VW, which we reported on, of course, VW is in preparations of closing down some of its plants in Germany and Belgium. And simply why? One of those reasons is because there is so much competition from China and the Chinese automobile makers like BYD and others. And therefore, the West right now, as we are seeing in this article, is also making a big deal of this simply because BYD is beating even Tesla, is out-competing even Tesla, as we are seeing. So they are seeing that they are being annihilated. If you remember, we did a video where we asked a question: is the West about to face its century of humiliation under the hands of the Chinese automobile industry? And even it was before 24 hours and news came out that VW is considering closing some of its plants. Now, VW, which is a German automaker and the owner of many brands, including Lamborghini, including Bugatti, and many other brands under the VW mega brand or so-called monopoly, has been selling a lot of vehicles in China. Now, what is happening is that in China, they have the ability of producing cheaply their vehicles, but they have been outcompeted in China by the Chinese automobile makers. Their sales in China have collapsed. What has this left them with? It has left them with only the European market. But looking at their production capacity, VW, which has a production capacity of over 14 million vehicles, is producing below that capacity, is producing 9 million vehicles currently. And there's another problem. There's another problem here. the market in Europe is insufficient. That is one of the problems. Number two, the labor cost in Europe is also exorbitant. As you know, their countries are completely developed countries. So if you are going to pay for labor, you have to pay high costs. And this is unsustainable because it leaves very small margins for them. It leaves very small profits for them compared to when they are making vehicles in China and selling in China, because in China, the labor is kind of cheaper. Now, the other thing that is happening is that they cannot now manufacture in China and sell in Europe, okay? Because the vehicles which are being manufactured in China, whether it is VW, whether it is Tesla, they have slapped tariffs on them by both the West, all of the West, let me say, including Canada, the United States, who have all put 100% tariffs. So whether it is VW, whether it is General Motors vehicle, if you manufacture it in China and bring it to the United States, you will pay exorbitant tariffs on that particular vehicle. Now, when we go to Europe, Europe also has imposed a tariff of 37% on vehicles which are coming from China. So now VW, which is Volkswagen, is caught between home and away from home due to the cost of production of its products. That you have huge costs at home and then you have tariffs, you are faced with tariffs if you manufacture outside of Europe. And this is a big challenge. Now, the other challenge which they are facing is that Europe, in its naivety and under the pressure of the United States, decided to boycott the energy from Russia, the cheap energy from Russia. This is the gas. Russia never refused to give them the energy. They themselves boycotted it and they said they don't want the energy. And to make it even worse, they watched as the pipeline, the Nord Stream 2, which delivers the fuel, which delivers the gas from Russia to Europe, was blown up. And they are still sitting on the investigation results. And they have not shared this with Russia. Now, here, this is where we see the problems that are going to face the European automobile industry. And let us look at what they are saying. They are asking, why is BYD so successful? Okay, while a lot of factors have contributed to BYD's success, the major ones include far-reaching government support. That is what they are claiming, of course. Low supply chain costs, cheap labor, which we've spoken about, of course, and a wide offering of EVs. BYD has a wide range of EVs which has rolled out. These days it has been even almost rolling out EV brands new EV brands models every month, almost every month. So it has a wide range of EV brands. And of course, they've spoken about the issue of labor and the fact that BYD had already built up its own supply chain. It manufactures about more than, I think, 78% of its parts which go into its vehicles. So it manufactures its own batteries, it has its own research facilities, and it manufactures 78% of the components that are going into its vehicles. So this has given it an edge compared to companies like Volkswagen, which are outsourcing their parts. And of course, even Tesla, of course, is trying to catch up itself also so that it can manufacture some of its parts within the United States so that it can have control over its supply chain. And some people have been saying that Tesla has about 75%. It manufactures about 75% of its parts. And we had, of course, the founder, Elon Musk, even saying that if it is necessary to cause a coup d'etat in Bolivia so that they can have access to lithium from Bolivia, which is in South America, they should do it. He supports a coup, wherever it happens, as long as it give him access to these resources. But that is the news that is coming out of, in the West, and of course coming out of the automobile industry. When do you think the African automobile industry will take off? Because remember that Africa actually was one of the first continents to produce an electric vehicle, and that was produced by Kira Motors in Uganda, by the students of Makerere University. But of course, we were not able to commercialize, and up to now, we have not been able to commercialize. Even companies like NIO, which comes from China, have been able to sell more than 300,000 vehicles. Yet, NIO came about 7 years after Kira Motors. After the first electric vehicle was produced in Uganda, the prototype was produced. NIO came 7 years later and was launched 7 years later. And that is when it is also started later on to produce its prototypes and later on to enter the market. And it has sold over 300,000 vehicles. So why do you think that in Africa we have not been able to commercialize this? Because we are not unified as a continent and we cannot produce at scale. And Uganda does not have the money to invest in this. Yet when we are working together, if we were together as a continent and they solicited help from all African governments, they would have been able to put up a plant immediately. Tesla put up a giga Shanghai factory, a factory in Shanghai, and it built that factory in just 9 months. In Uganda, it has been more than 10 years. They are still building one factory which is going to produce these vehicles, of course, which is very unfortunate. Now, that shows you that Africa has to come together. We have to come together to produce at scale to be able to compete with these companies. The Uganda alone cannot compete with the West. And even now, Volkswagen, which is a mega manufacturing company, a huge manufacturing company, like I said, with a lot of brands under it, it is facing challenge because of scale, problems of scale. Now it cannot produce at scale against a bigger competitor, who is China. China now can produce at a much bigger scale compared to it, and therefore it can produce at a lower price. So this is the challenge. Now Africa must also learn from this. And we cannot do this if we have a small thinking. We are still thinking at a lower level, whereby we are thinking about Chidima is a Nigerian, he should not compete in South African beauty pageant. This is small thinking where we are still thinking about xenophobia. We need to come together and send equipment to space, have space programs, have automobile companies that can sell all across the continent and can tap into the capital of all the African continent, because we have enough capital on the African continent. We don't lack money on the African continent. We have the same size of economy as India, and India, as we are seeing, it has its own industries. It has a full-scale automobile industry. Forget about the assembly, whereby Ford is assembling vehicles in South Africa, Mercedes-Benz and these Toyotas, they are assembling vehicles in South Africa. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about having your own brands and manufacturing vehicles in your own continent, and that is Africa. So that mindset, we have to adopt it as the new generation of Africans, and the old generation of Africans, which is preoccupied with the colonial borders, we have to abandon that mindset. We have to abandon the mindset of clinging onto the colonial borders and claiming that this is it. This is where I am, and therefore this is where everything ends. That cannot compete in today's global world, and that's what we are talking about, that we have to produce at scale to be able to compete with the rest of the world and in all technologies, because today we consume the same amount of knowledge, we consume the same information, and the information space has been democratized. So there's no excuse for us not to compete with the rest of the world. But what do you think? My name is Kwame Gonza, and please like the video and share it with other people on the platform and outside of this platform. Invite others to the platform and support us, please. Support us on our PayPal account, and also support us with a super chat and in other ways which you can. Thank you so much for being part of this platform. My name is Kwame Gonza, and I will talk to you later.